Awesome. Good morning, and welcome to the welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors. We're very happy that you've joined us, and we'd love to get to know more about you after the service. If you haven't already stopped by the newcomer table, we invite you to do so. We can add you to our e-lists and make sure that you're invited to all of the different programs and events that we have happening here at UU Princeton. There are two wonderful things after worship this morning. The first is that we have a spring sale brunch. This is a fellowship brunch. Everybody's invited. You can go have delicious food, make some new friends. It's in Founders Room, which is just on the other side of the lounge over there. And the proceeds from our brunch will go to benefit our spring sale, which is our huge all-congregation outreach event that will happen a little bit later in the spring. You'll hear tons more about spring sale as we get closer, but today you can help support it by going to the brunch and having a great time there. And before then, we invite anyone interested in Loaves and Fishes, which is a collaborative program that we do with the UUs of Washington Crossing to support a kind of food meal outreach event this time of year. If you're interested in helping with that, just kind of gaggle and congregate in the front of Channing here for about 10 or 15 minutes after the service. Louise Sr. will be here. She coordinates that event. She'll be able to give you a little bit of information on it and let you know how you can be involved in that. So if you want to help with Loaves and Fishes, start here for a few minutes and then everybody head on over to the brunch and enjoy a great meal. A few more announcements. Choir rehearsals are on Wednesdays, and in particular, as we head into All Music Sunday on March 29th, we need more voices, and in particular, more men's voices in our choirs. The rehearsals are March 11th, 18th, and 25th. We invite you to contact the wonderful Sue Denouter to add your voice to our music ministry or to see how you can be a part of that ministry. We also want to let you know that the Women's Alliance and the youth group are currently collecting items to be donated to families separated by ICE. Items that are needed are on a sign-up genius on our website, which is uuprinceton.org, and there's a box available in Robinson Lounge where you can drop items off. We will gather those through March 15th, so up until next Sunday, and then a group will gather after the service to assemble the bags. And lastly, you are invited to join our board president, Emma Moore, and myself for our next film night, featuring the film Dogma, 1999, purposefully timed to be right around Christmas. Easter, not Christmas. Easter, not Christmas. It'll be in Foz Theater on Friday, March 27th from 7 to 9:30 p.m. Dogma is a modern classic that blends humor and heresy as it tells the story of two fallen angels trying to return to heaven, even if it means the end of everything. It's written and directed by Kevin Smith, who did Clerks and Chasing Amy and a bunch of movies. It is rated R, so plan appropriately, and we hope you can join us Friday, March 27th, 7 to 9 o'clock in Foz Theater. And now, with open minds and loving hearts, with yesterday's wisdom and bearing tomorrow's promise, let us gather together in worship.
We gather this morning as one community, a community united by common ideals: love, justice, diversity, freedom, mutual care, equity. Yet look around. Look at the faces of those around you. Each face represents an individual, every one of us with our own story, needs, strengths, and faults. We light our chalice today honoring our common connection and also the uniqueness that lives within each of us. Please join me in our unison affirmation. This is a congregation of open minds, of helping hands, and of loving hearts. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in the world. Will you join me in prayer? Spirit of the universe, life force that flows through all beings, power beyond our knowledge. We ask you to help us to see beyond our dependence on opposites, to transcend our desire to know who is like us and who is not, Open us to the knowledge that in this room there are complexities and diversities of identities beyond black and white, old and young, woman and man, poor and rich, uneducated and educated, disabled and able-bodied, gay and straight, ill and healthy, wrong and right, broken and whole. In this room, there are people who embody juxtaposition, who can tell stories written on their bodies about both and neither, who carry intimate pieces of the truth that there is no such thing as opposites. Spirit of many names and of no name at all, help us find release from our belief that all things must be either or. This belief that walls us off from one another, ensnaring us in a battle of same versus different. Help us to open our minds, to deeply listen, and to truly know one another, finally glimpsing the kaleidoscope of beauty of the divine. Amen.
Our reading this morning is titled Marginal Wisdom. It's written by Reverend Leslie Takahashi, a truly exceptional Unitarian Universalist minister out in California. It's titled Marginal Wisdom. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. My life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either ors. I believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha. I believe in human potential or a power beyond a single human will. I am broken or I am powerful. My life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both, of and. They teach us to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young. My vision sees the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our own lives a sanctuary to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when they will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center.
I've always loved the water. As a toddler, I never begrudgingly took a bath. Bath time was soothing and comforting, especially when I was old enough not to have to share the tub with my brother. My father was responsible for getting me and my brother ready for bed, and I have fond memories of that time spent with my dad. When I was old enough to go outside by myself, I would go outside while it was raining. The air felt and smelled differently. I would sit out on our front porch and watch and listen to the rain. The times when it rained and the sun was shining at the same time was particularly delightful. The sunlight shining through the raindrops seemed to look like glitter. In the summertime after the rain, I would place my bare feet in the gutter beside the curb and let the warm water flow through my toes. When I was in the first or second grade, my mother decided that me and my brother should take swimming lessons at the local YWCA. My father was in the Navy and he knew how to swim. My sister did too. But my mom did not, and I believe she wanted to make sure that the rest of us did. I thought swimming lessons was a great idea. I was glad that neither of my parents thought it best to teach me by just throwing me in the water. I had heard stories of these so-called swimming lessons of questionable pedagogy. Although that method may have worked for some, I had no reason to believe that it would work for me. I was eager to learn and get a new swimsuit too. When we got to the Y, we dressed out, rinsed off, and we were instructed to go get in the pool. I think the first day was low on instruction and high on free time. I made use of the time getting accustomed to the water. I looked forward to swim class. I was a good student in other areas, and I didn't have any reason to believe I wouldn't be a good student in this as well. I remember using the kickboard and splashing a lot of water around and kicking my feet. One day, though, it was time to jump into the pool from the side. So we all had to get out of the pool and line up to jump in, one at a time. I remember this was the one time our instructor actually got into the pool. Our instructor was standing in the pool waiting to catch us when we jumped in. I made it a point to get to the back of the line. Each time someone jumped in, I moved back and let someone go in front of me. When it was eventually my turn, I decided it was illogical to jump in the pool, so I headed toward the shallow end to walk down the steps. Before I could get to the steps, I was told to stop and jump in like everyone else had done. After several long seconds, I approached the edge and I jumped in. I'm not sure if the instructor actually caught me, but at that point it didn't matter. I was glad that it was over. Other than my hesitancy to jump in the pool, I thought I had done well in swim class. After about 5 weeks, it was report card time. I was always confident and hopeful during regular school report card time, in contrast to my brother, who was usually nervous about a conduct grade. The report card had 4 drawings of a fish with the option of the instructor coloring in one fish to represent the student's grade. My report card had a pink fish. I knew this had to be good because salmon is pink and I like salmon. Wrong. Turns out my brother had a blue fish, and a blue fish was the best possible grade. The blue fish was the first possible grade at the top of the choices, and the pink fish was the last possible grade. I was profoundly disappointed. How was it that I had failed swim class? I know I didn't get the rhythm of the breathing and the arm strokes and resorted to just holding my breath, but I didn't think that minor detail warranted a failing grade. At first, I was so discouraged that I had concluded that I should stay out of the pool, and that the pool and the water was not a place or space for me. Later, I concluded part of my failing grade should be attributed to the instructor. To be honest, I just didn't trust the instructor. The instructor hardly ever got in the pool with us and seemed to lack patience. The instructor had a niece our age who was in the class. The instructor's niece would demonstrate whatever we were supposed to learn that day. The whole thing was just different and unusual to me. My brother could tell that I was hurt about my grade. He gave it a day or so, and in his most excited voice, he asked, "Do you want to go to the pool?" I looked at him with a sad face and said no. Fortunately, my brother didn't take no for an answer. I went back to the pool with my brother, and he made an effort to teach me how to tread water and float. He had looked out for me during the lessons, and after the lessons were over too. I had learned a lot from my brother. Eventually, I started asking him about going to the pool, and he was no longer interested. It seemed as if his asking me to go was really for me and not him. The following summers, I continued to go to the Y, to the free pool time, even when my brother didn't go with me. I enjoyed being in the water, and I continued to move across the width of the pool using my arms and legs. Because of the breathing thing, most people would not have called it swimming, but I did. Also, I discovered that I absolutely loved floating on my back in particular. I became an expert back floater. Floating just gives a feeling of weightlessness, and the weightlessness seems to make time almost stand still. When I would float on my back, I had to be careful not to fall asleep. There, floating on my back, I was in such a peaceful place. All I could hear were the sounds under the water, which were few. Swimming didn't come up again until I started college. A swim course was required for graduation at Emory, and as an incoming freshman, I had been informed that if I had any skill at swimming, I should take swimming 201 and not swimming 101. So, being the follower that I was, I registered for 201. Having deemed my pink fish erroneous and certainly not a reflection of what I was capable of. Turns out I had truly overestimated my swimming skills. I was in swimming 201 with students who had been swimming all of their lives since they were babies and toddlers. Some of them had pools in their backyards, and swimming was not an occasional thing. Plus, after talking with my friend group, I realized all of them were in swimming 101, although they knew how to swim, coordinate the breathing in the water and everything. They were so tickled that I had registered for 201 and not 101. Regardless, I enjoyed my time in swimming 201. Spoiler alert, I still didn't completely learn how to coordinate my breathing, but I learned a lot of different strokes. And I bet you can guess which one was my favorite. Yes, the backstroke. The only drawback to the backstroke was that I could not see where I was going. I sat out of class only one time during the entire semester. Toward the end of class, we learned safety maneuvers. We each got a life jacket and a life preserver and learned how to get a disabled person or incapacitated person to safety, and for our purposes, that was just the side of the pool. Our final task was to jump off the diving board, or I should say step off the diving board, while wearing a life jacket. Although I had certainly built up my confidence in swimming 201, I had hesitancy when it came to performing the final task of the diving board. Much like that first summer swim class, I made sure I was at the back of the line. The diving board was quite intimidating. I had never been on anybody's diving board. This was about a 30-foot high diving board for competitive diving. Although I had laid back to go last, I did not, like another student, go up the ladder and decide to turn around and go back down. I took my time, I kept breathing, I prayed, and I stepped off the diving board, through the air and into the water. I didn't come to the surface as quickly as I had anticipated, but I made it to the surface and breathed and made it to the side of the pool. It was over before I knew it. At first, I regretted not taking swim 101, but by the end of 201, I had no regrets. I had risen to the challenge. I had learned a lot about swimming and myself, and I still loved the water. My experience with swimming, I believe, taught me the importance of self-awareness and just recognizing what is purely, or at the very least, predominantly internal and personal to me. I almost let my pink fish influence how I felt about the water, my comfort level with the water, my relationship with the water. There was a moment at which I had become very discouraged, but I'm grateful that I didn't let that experience be the end of swimming for me or completely change my relationship with the water. On my journey of recalling my experiences with the water, or with swimming, I discovered the existence of something called free diving. Free diving, for those of you who may not know, is underwater diving without any breathing apparatus. The diver relies solely on their ability to hold their breath. I also discovered a competitive free diver named Tatiana Mendez, who has represented Cape Verde in competitions. For Mendez, the ocean is a place of peace and power and truth. When other free divers were asked, what is free diving for you? The response included freedom, being present and focused, and a place where I can find peace and silence. Getting to know the truth about who you are and what brings you those priceless intangibles to your state of mind and your state of being is a part of what makes us human. At the same time, the process is different for each and every one of us. Recently, I've become intrigued with the idea of whether our language or our use of language shapes the way we think. To what extent does our language shape our reality? Lara Boroditsky, a cognitive scientist, conducts research studies on how language guides our reasoning. Malika Grant, an author and podcast host, discusses how language even shapes our identity. My concern is that in our use of language, we restrict ourselves to extremes of certainty, binaries, and what we categorize as stark contrast or opposites. This idea is not new. One of my favorite biblical proverbs is the first part of Proverbs 18 and 21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. But some may say this proverb, or some may use this proverb as a tool to muzzle themselves or others, or to resist or to deny their own or someone else's truth. I wonder to what extent do we learn words and phrases that affect how we think, that affect how we see reality, perhaps without even realizing it. To what extent do we subscribe to philosophies or grab onto sound bites without any forethought of their meaning or application, generally or specifically to us? It appears that the phrase sink or swim is most often associated with the binary of perfect success or hopeless failure. A similar idiom is all or nothing. It turns out that cognitive behavioral therapists have concluded that internalizing these types of phrases can contribute to anxiety and or depression. What I dislike most about the phrase sink or swim is its implied lack of humility or the absence of grace. Who's to say what is a sink or swim situation? Why does it sound like a one-shot opportunity that will never come around again? Where's the maybe, the what if, the something that calls us to use our imaginations? What are the possibilities when we exercise caution and not oversimplifying our humanness and all its complexities? As a child, I thought my pink fish was an indication that I had failed swimming, whether it was intended that way or not. I had almost concluded that I was a sinker and not a swimmer, or at least a non-swimmer, and that I should stay in that category and out of the water. After my first swimming lessons, I thought swimming meant coordinated breathing with the arm and leg movement in the water, but like many things, there were nuances. There were variations. There were ranges, alternatives, and options. Turns out it's not sink or swim. I was unsure about my 21-year-old son's experience with swimming, so after telling him about mine, I asked him about his. The funny thing is my question to him, or at least the thought process in my mind, was still in a binary of sink or swim. I asked him, "Do you know how to swim?" He responded quickly, "Yes." And I just keep my head above the water. And I thought, what a novel idea. Swimming, like many other things, is nuanced, and in learning the nuances of swimming, I discovered different ways or methods of swimming. I learned different strokes. Now that's the beginning of a good idiom. I learned a lot of what was in between sinking and swimming. I saw my ability and functionality differently. I learned how to help someone in the water get to safety with a life preserver. I learned how to stay afloat in the water. I learned how to rest and relax in the water. After my first swimming lessons, I had internalized a standard that was not of my own and had not acknowledged my own in-between. I am not saying there's no such thing as failure, but before we internalize failure, perhaps we should pause and look at growth, or just the in-between. Where do we find ourselves on this March 8th of 2026? We are seeing unprecedented authoritarianism from the executive position of the federal government. We see humanitarian efforts at home and abroad dwindling day by day, and oppression and human rights abuses are multiplying. At the same time, we are in the midst of military escalations here and clearly abroad. We must find and have a moment of peace or a place of solace. Discouragement will come, disappointment, and even anger. But how will we maintain and sustain? How do we find peace? Where is the in-between of sinking into despair and staying away from or out of the water? Where's the in-between that is consistent with our UU's values and acknowledgement of who we are and where we are? I think it is found with patience. Time can bring a change in perspective, particularly when we are open to being transformed. At the same time, the in-between can be found in leaning into the spirit within or the spirit outside. And most importantly, we can find our in-between in our relationships and interactions with others, and in just knowing that we are not alone. These places and spaces can bring us peace, enable us to keep going, to keep trying, and to always have hope. May it be so. Ashe and amen. As we extinguish our chalice, let us be kind, be brave, be just, be merciful, be hopeful. This is how we keep the chalice flame burning until we are together again to light it anew. Go in peace and amen.